Hello and welcome to this review of Ape Out for the Nintendo Switch. I'm always on the lookout for new indie games to try out, and this one looked appealing because of the really distinct art style it has. But, is it all style and no substance? Let's find out. Ape Out was developed by Gabe Cuzzillo, published by Devolver Digital, and released in 2019 for the Switch and PC. The gameplay is almost like a top-down shooter, but instead of playing as a soldier with a variety of firearms, you play as an ape whose only defense is his own two arms. You have the ability to shove enemies into walls, thus making them explode into a pool of blood and severed limbs, or you can grab your opponents, which comes in useful for using them as human shields, more accurately throwing them, and has the added benefit of making them panic and fire off a few shots of whatever weapon they're carrying. This effectively gives you access to some ranged attacks, even if they are unpredictable and difficult to aim. As I said earlier, the main thing that stood out to me about this game at first was the visual design. It's got this really cool minimal style that's extremely reminiscent of certain jazz album covers, and even the typography used in the game mimics this style. It's one of those examples of a game that doesn't have the greatest graphics in terms of being photorealistic or having motion captured animation, but it rivals games that do have those things by having such a strong sense of style, which arguably makes this more visually pleasing and definitely more visually distinct. I also love how the perspective is kind of warped so that the walls point towards the centre of the screen slightly and are extremely exaggerated in height. This not only looks cool, but it also stops you from being able to see around corners or over walls to see what's coming next. It's an awesome way of keeping you on your toes while also adding to the visuals in a pleasing way that I've not seen done before in a top-down game like this. However, it's actually not the awesome visuals that make this game stand out. Obviously that is a part of it, but the other major element at play here is the soundtrack and overall sound design. The game utilises a dynamic soundtrack, and I've never seen it done quite as well as this before. The game opens up with these simple jazzy notes and drum beats as if a band is preparing to play, and this is synchronised with text appearing with developer names and other such things. Then the gameplay begins and everything is quiet until you break free and slam into the first enemy, where the music suddenly blasts to life, reflecting the state of awareness of your enemies. The more enemies are on screen, or the more enemies that are aware of your presence, the more intense the music becomes. But on top of that, pretty much every action you perform has some sort of musical element to go along with it. As enemies slam against walls, there will be cymbal clashes, gunshots and explosions also have musical accompaniment, and it creates this strange sense of reactiveness where the music appears to be created for your gameplay specifically, rather than just background music for a normal video game level. It's like you're listening to an improvisational jazz band that's playing along live to your gameplay, and it's so damn cool. It's literally worth getting the game just to experience this element of it alone. But what makes this game incredibly special is that not only are the music and graphics astonishingly high quality, but the gameplay itself is an absolute blast too. The game is split into 4 levels, each with 2 sub-levels. These levels are referred to as discs, and the sub-levels as sides. So the whole jazz music aesthetic even flows through the game's structure and menus too, which is so cool. The level select screen has you select an album rather than a level, which is another nice detail that reflects this whole musical experience. The objective of the game is to escape from your different captors, who have all placed you in different predicaments. You'll be escaping from an animal testing facility, running down a huge skyscraper, dodging bombs in a war zone, and busting out of a cargo ship. With each new area comes several new obstacles to keep the gameplay fresh. For example, the skyscraper level has sniper enemies shoot at you from across the road, and has these what I can only assume are SWAT teams breaking through the windows to try and stop your killing spree. The Warzone level has bombs falling from the sky which need to be avoided at all costs, and the animal testing facility will at one point lose its power and the lights turn off, allowing you to only see enemies via the torchlight. The actual enemy variety was another thing that really impressed me, because despite you yourself only having a very limited amount of attacks and movement options, the game is kept interesting through having you constantly adapt to different scenarios based on what enemies are around. For example, shotgun enemies deal huge damage at close range, but shoot fairly slowly, allowing you to rush them and kill them before they have a chance to hurt you. Rifle enemies are the easiest in the game to defeat, but often appear in groups and can shoot with deadly accuracy from a distance. Flamethrower enemies are easily avoided due to them having really short range, but they shoot extremely quickly, making the best option just to avoid and run away from them. And then there's also bomb enemies who explode when they crash into a wall or another enemy, meaning you have to be extremely careful not to blow yourself up around these. When combinations of these enemy types all appear at the same time, you'll find yourself doing this huge mathematical equation in your mind and grabbing a nearby shotgun enemy, shooting a bomber, and then throwing the shotgun enemy into a rifle guy, creating this insane sense of flow where you can chain all of these abilities together seamlessly in such a creative way. Adding to these different gameplay elements is the fact that you can't just learn the level layouts and blast through them knowing exactly where everything is, because each area is randomly generated upon death, meaning that you'll never know what enemies are positioned where, or the exact layout of each area either. The game is pretty lenient with checkpoints though, so even if you're struggling, with enough perseverance you should be able to make it through, which stops it feeling too unfair while still being challenging enough to be fun and rewarding. Everything about the game, from its distinct visuals, its amazing dynamic soundtrack, and the addicting and tactical gameplay, is nothing short of astonishing, and the production value here is off the scale, especially when you consider this is an indie game made mostly by a single person. It all just works together, and it creates this harmony of blood, jazz and apes. But that being said, I do have some extremely minor nitpicks that don't at all detract from the rest of the game, but I figured I would mention them anyway. Perhaps the main thing here is that the base game is extremely short. The length of time the game takes you to finish will vary depending on your skill level obviously, but I finished the entire thing in 1 hour. It would have been nice to have a couple more levels so that the game could keep its hooks in me for a little bit longer, but luckily it does have some post-game content to keep you coming back. There's an arcade mode which gives you the challenge of finishing an entire level with 1 life, and as you go through you'll be scored on how many people you kill, how quickly you do each area, and how stylishly you defeat your foes too. This is great because it's always addicting seeing how high you can get your score, and it gives you that, oh just one more go mentality. There's also a harder mode where each area is much longer than it is normally and features much more enemies as well. This is great and is probably where I'll get most of my time out of this game because I love a good challenge. Then finally we have this epilogue level called Break In, which is unlocked after finishing the main game and is basically the same as the animal testing level, but you go backwards and attempt to get inside the facility. I won't ruin why you would want to do this, but it's a pretty cool ending section for the game. So yeah, maybe my criticism of the game being too short isn't exactly valid with there being this much to do after completion, but still, I would have liked to have seen maybe a couple more levels, but maybe that's just me being greedy. I would have also liked to have seen more cutscenes showing the levels transition into each other. This happens between level 3 and 4, where after escaping the war zone you get tranquilized and wake up on a cargo ship, which is where level 4 takes place. But there's not really anything like this between level 1 and 2 or level 2 and 3. Rather you just wake up at the start of the level and you've been captured again, but we don't know how. Still, this is obviously a really minor thing, but I thought the transition between level 3 and 4 was so good and I wanted to see more of that. Overall though, this is an absolutely amazing game. It has style coming out of every orifice and it's just an incredible experience from beginning to end. I literally recommend anyone who thinks this in any way looks interesting to give it a go. You won't be disappointed. And that's Ape Out, an awesome indie game that's a must play in my opinion. It does some seriously impressive stuff, like with how the music is integrated into the gameplay, and then on top of that the gameplay being so good, and also the visuals being so amazing, and just the way it all comes together to create such a spectacle is nothing short of incredible. I'm definitely looking forward to whatever it is that Gabe Cuzzillo is working on next. Maybe an Ape Out sequel with multiplayer elements would be interesting, but whatever it is, I'm there. This is a core example of why I want to cover more indie games on the channel that can be so surprising and have gameplay elements that you just wouldn't see in anything from the AAA scene. It's great stuff. But anyway, I'll stop rambling now. As per usual, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe to see more stuff like this coming soon, and leave a comment down below letting me know what you think to Ape Out. And until next time, bye!